So I want to give an update on this YouTube channel. And I think probably the best way to do that is to start off with kind of an anecdote. So we had a problem with our plumbing where everything in the house got backed up. And this happened maybe about a year ago, where none of the drains would drain or anything like that. And so we called in a plumber. And the plumber went and looked and put this little camera on a snake down the main drain. And he found that roots had grown in through our main drain and had clogged it up. And so he had two different suggestions on what he could do to fix it. The first was he could just clean it out the best that he could and remove the blockage, and that would get us back and working again. But the second long-term solution that he recommended was to go ahead and dig up the ground, replace the piping, possibly move the piping somewhere away from the trees, or maybe even cut down some trees and then replace the piping. But it would be a long-term solution. It would cost a lot of money. So we ended up with going the cheaper route and getting the line just flushed and cleaned out. Fast forward a year, and about a week or two ago, our plumbing backed up again, and it was the main line. And he didn't go through all the scoping to see exactly what it was, but I probably would venture a guess to say that the roots had a problem. I tell that story because I really have the heart and the passion to communicate, and this channel is one of the ways that I wanted to do that. The problem is my line got backed up. And so for several months, I've kind of been at this standstill with this mounting concern for different things that are happening in our world, and specifically in our country. I didn't know how to address them, and I felt like I wanted to, but I didn't want to alienate anybody or speak before I had time to really process and be able to speak in a good, calm, truthful manner. And so it just left me kind of plugged up. And then the events happened at the Capitol this month. And I saw lots of people in social media and in different forms of communication saying how they're praying for our country. And I'm praying for our country, but kind of like the video that I did with the log in my eye, I'm also praying about my part in it all. Have I messed up? Have I not owned up to using my voice and my humanness to be a part of the solution and rather than the problem? And for the most part, there's a lot of things that I saw that I'm not sure other people have seen, or at least haven't really talked about. But I saw them, and I remained silent. And that was the clog in my drain. I realized that remaining silent is only helping to add fuel on the fire of this problem, where that fire really needs a fire extinguisher. And so it's my hope to try to be a little part of that fire extinguisher. So, the thought at the beginning of this channel was to do a bunch of different variety type stuff and really kind of mix in some really lighthearted and goofy stuff with some heavy stuff to bring attention to it. So I'm not deviating from that. But for a certain amount of time, I feel like I've got to really put a lot more focus on some of the things that I want to share that I think may be helpful for the situation that we're in. Really, there's two main prompts to this. One prompt for this is a question that has plagued me this entire year, and that's the question of, where is the line? Now, I've mentally and emotionally been challenged about this the past year. about where is the line, that maybe this line doesn't exist, and that there is just this idea and concept that we can pretty much do, say, and think anything we want to, without any repercussions. Like, there is no line. Everything is acceptable. And I reject that notion. And although I reject that notion, I'm having a really hard time believing that there is a line for a good chunk of our country. Almost to the point where I'm almost convinced that there isn't a line, especially with the events that happened this past week, and how that was just a little bump, a little bump in the road, and so many people moved on, and our national discourse and the focus went somewhere else. There's been many things like that that's happened this past year that I just feel like we've just kind of ridden over the bump and just accepted certain things that I didn't think we as a society would accept. So in doing this is kind of a personal conquest to affirm that there should be a line and confirm whether or not that line exists, and challenge the notion that it doesn't exist. Challenge that idea in my head that, oh, there just isn't a line. Since I reject that, I have this struggle in my brain that I want to confirm that that line exists. And so there has to be a line somewhere, because if there isn't a line, what have we become? What is the foundation of our societal and cultural civilization? What does that foundation look like if there's no framework or guidelines to growing that for the benefit of our species? And I think one of the main things that's coursing through my blood is the need to speak truth to reality. Now, what I mean by that is we've grown up in this era watching a bunch of different movies. And there's lots of crazy like sci-fi movies and espionage movies and all this really far-fetched theatrical drama that has unfolded on the screen for us to take in, and in some ways that's become a part of our mindset and our culture. But I feel like we've gotten to a place where people have just watched too many movies, and there's this idea that there's so much complexity to everything, and there's so much happening that we don't see, and there's so many different powers at struggle and at work. And I don't believe any of that. From what I've seen, everything's really, really simple. It's not that complex. It's not a sci-fi movie. Everything is fairly simple. It's much simpler than what a lot of us believe to be true. I think for the most part in this age and in this era, we overlook that, and we don't give it credence, and we don't affirm that it's simple. We think that it's complex, because what I think is that we often overlook a lot of the simple things that are right in front of our eyes because we feel like we need to be entertained. Those simple things are just simply not entertaining enough for our attention. We're living in this age that we're just bombarded by information 24/7. We walk around with access to the world's information in our pockets. Not only are we not wired and created for that, but the ramifications of living through that day by day, I don't think we've fully appreciated yet. And so when we are met with these simple explanations, sometimes the way that our brain's wired in today's era of information overload just rejects those simple explanations and has us latch on to these pretty darn sci-fi intricate premises. And it's just not how reality is. So that's why I am going to be speaking some truth to reality in some of the things I'm going to be talking about. And I feel like I just needed to do this video to kind of unclog that drain. But I also wanted to kind of set that own baseline or foundation for me moving forward to just give you an idea of what you can expect on the channel for the time being. I have this overcomplicated brain that is also a perfectionist type A personality, and I want to do everything just perfect. And there's really no way that I can move forward in that type of mindset. So my idea is that I'm probably going to at least try to focus on less editing, and do shorter videos that are just off the cuff and very kind of small in stature. And some big topics, I'm sure that I'm going to have to work through those challenges of breaking them into smaller segments and expanding on things when they're needed. But for the most part, it's going to be different than what I'm naturally used to doing. And just so that you know that where my mindset is, whenever I've ever done public speaking, which I've done since I was a teenager, one of the things that's really proven well for me and has always resulted in good fruit from the intention is speaking in a way or putting myself out there in a way that if I just reach one person, then that's phenomenal. So my goal here is not to try to reach a broad audience, but it's to kind of go deep and make hopefully an impact on one person. If I do that, then the goal is achieved. And so I think that helps sometimes with affirming the truth and the intention behind things when we speak to it. It has helped me reaffirm the reasons for speaking about certain things in the past when that's my prayer, that I reach one person. And like I said, it's also given fruit. So yeah, so that's my mindset. I'll probably follow up with maybe some other background videos just so that, like, if you don't know me, you kind of get an insight into the way my brain works and my mind works. And hopefully I could put out enough stuff that you can kind of tell where that is anyway. But I don't know. I'm kind of doing this off the cuff, but I feel this real need to be a part of the solution, and I just don't know any other way to do it. So ways that you could be praying for me, if that's something that you do, is just that I would be able to really speak the truth and doing it in a manner that all can understand and that's transparent, and that I would focus on things in a positive way. I already feel like that's going to be a big challenge, is to maintain some positivity and to really focus in on what some of the positive outcomes can be for some of the different things that we may talk about. Now, I know I didn't give a whole lot of detail there in my rambling, but if any of that sounds remotely something that you might be interested in exploring, I invite you to follow along. And I will say that most of my content's going to be on YouTube. Not only am I not like a native Facebook user, it's always been a platform that's very hard for me to consume. Just seeing some of the things that I've seen on there. And so most of my content I'm going to be posting on this channel on YouTube. Who knows? I may be doing some Twitch streams or some other crazy things. Who knows? So Yeah, that's really about it. I probably said more than I intended to say, but I just want to let you know what's going on. And hopefully, if we all work together, we can unite around some common themes and ideas to make this world a better place. We're certainly capable of it. Now it's just a matter of if we can find the will. So, with that, I'll leave you with one challenge for the day, and that is to stop and think in this time of information overload about where you're spending your time and energy, and if it's giving and providing good fruit or bad fruit in your soul, in your mind, and in your heart. And try to take one intentional step in doing something today that provides you with a positive benefit in all those different respects. Until next time, keep the faith.